adventure trail seekers. Today I'm going to show you how to build your own friction fire kit and talk to you about how you can make it work even in really bad conditions. As you might have noticed in the background, everything's covered in snow. Snow is coming down. So how do you take something as primitive as rubbing two sticks together and make it work even in conditions this bad? The answer is you just have to pay attention to the details. A real quick overview of all the parts that we got to collect from the landscape and we got to build. First one, the bow. All you really need is a strong stick. It's got a little bit of a curve and it's about as long as your arm is. Alright, so hardwoods, maple, oak, hickory, ash, anything strong and not rotten. Basically, you're just going to carve a couple notches in either end where you could tie your string to the stick. Sometimes if you can find a stick like this with a fork, this is just a piece of honeysuckle, it works pretty good. It bends a little bit, but that's fine. If you can find a stick like this, carve a notch into the end like that, and then have a fork on the other end to hold your rope here, that works pretty good too. Something like this would work really well for your bow. Alright, your spindle. Cylindrical piece of wood. Pretty simple. Basically, you're just going to look for a dead branch that is about an inch thick and it's pretty straight. A live branch isn't going to work so well because a live branch has water in it. That's not going to make it very easy, especially when everything's already wet. So you want to make it as easy as you can to start this fire. Alright, so the next part, the fireboard. Basically, you're going to break off another limb, a dead limb. Dead is key. How do you know if it's dead? If you scrape the bark a little bit with your fingernail and there's no green underneath, then it's probably dead. The biggest thing is it's got to be about the same hardness as your spindle. If these two woods are different hardnesses, one of them will wear the other one away too fast and it won't work. So you want soft wood. Okay, any soft wood like pine, hemlock can work, but it's not the greatest. Pine and hemlock are full of sap and pitch. That can be a problem if it hasn't been dead long enough to drain out. If the wood has been dead a long while, all that pitch and stuff will have gone back into the tree and you can use it pretty well. Otherwise, if it's full of pitch, it'll gum up and it won't work that well. Let's see, basswood, probably one of my favorites. This is basswood here. This is actually a piece of white cedar. You don't find this around that often, but it grows around here and there. Eastern red cedar is another one, another good one. Trembling aspen or poplar, cottonwood. These are all examples of soft woods that work really well. Soft, makes it so these parts will rub together, wear away really quickly, and produce a lot of fuel to light this ember. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give the fire what it needs to start and to survive. So like I was saying at the beginning of this series, you need fuel, you need oxygen, and you need heat. Okay? So to provide the friction, okay, you can't just sit here and go like this. Do you think that'll work? If I go like that for a while? Probably not. Might be a little bit of dust there, but is it going to get hot enough? No. You need friction. So that's where your handhold comes into play. Okay, this is a really special handhold. You don't need to have a carved handhold like this. It's a piece of soapstone. Soapstone is a really soft, really smooth stone. It's easy to carve. So I basically just pecked out a depression in here, and that serves to produce down force on this. As you saw in the video, I'm pushing down on this as it spins to create the friction. The bow and the string, those are what help me to spin the spindle. Okay, here is a spindle I haven't carved yet, but this is just a dead piece of pine, and it's not rotten. You don't want rotten. If you look on the end here, you see it's nice and sound, even though there's these little galleries. All you really got to do, you got to find a dead branch like this, about this long, and you're going to take your knife and you're going to carve off all the high spots to make it as round and straight as you can. Okay, knife safety, there's a high spot right here. Carve it away from myself like that. Okay, pretty good. That's what you want, nice and straight. The last thing I got to do to this to make it ready to use is sharpen the ends. I got to sharpen the ends when I go to start the fire. One end's got to be really sharp, as you saw in the last bit where I lit the fire, to get this hole started. You can't carve a notch in this board until you get a hole burned in first. So to get this to mate to that, you got to get a nice sharp point carved in. And I could sit here and do that all day, but you already saw me do it a minute ago. This end has to fit inside of this depression right here. Is it going to fit? No. So I got to carve that down to fit into that depression so that it won't pop out. How do you find a fireboard, and how do you build it? How do you split it out of a branch? I'm going to show you that in a minute. Alright, so now I wanted to show you how you build your fireboard. This is that piece of pine branch that I harvested off of a white pine earlier. Really, really dead. It's been dead a long time, nice and dry, so it didn't hurt the tree to do it. So you don't need a branch this big. You just need a section maybe a foot long. So if you've got it, a folding saw like this would help tremendously to reduce this down. Okay, if you don't have something like this though, you can get really creative. Okay, you can use a creek rock like this with a little edge on it, and what you can do is you can hit this, keep moving around here, so now we kind of scored a little bit of a groove there, and if you can find the right setup, what you can then do is use leverage to hopefully snap it right at that score line. Ready? Here we go. Perfect. Look at that. So now we have a shorter chunk that we can use a little easier. But it's still way too big, so I want to split this in half. That's where your knife comes in handy. Alright, but if you didn't have a knife, you could still use that same rock. Alright, so let's try it with the rock and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to put this rock with an edge on it right in this groove right here. Then I'm going to take a strong stick like this, piece of oak, and I'm going to hit it, tap on it from the top. It's starting to split, you can see that. You can see the split right here. You're just trying to split it down the middle. There we go. Perfect. Split right in half. Alright, so now all we got to do is we got to square off these pieces into rectangles. So that's where we get out our knife. And if you didn't have a knife, you can use a rock, of course, but a lot easier to use a knife. Cutting away from yourself. Trying to get a nice flat surface, pretty much on all sides if you can. I want to make this into a rectangle more or less. Slowly and surely I'm turning this piece into a rectangle. I'm just taking all the rounded sides off to make this square, at least on this end. This end I'm going to basically use as the foot end to keep the fireboard stuck to the ground like this. That end I'll use to burn in the hole. You might be wondering about this string too. How do I make a string for this if I don't have a store-bought string? Well, I don't have enough time in this video to show you how to make an all-natural string. I can do that in a future video from now in making wild cordage and ropes. But for now, and you can use an old shoelace, you can use some baling twine. If you got really weak string like kite string, braid a bunch of strands together to try to make it stronger. Get a bow that actually bends in the handle like a real bow and arrow. When you attach the string, the whole bow actually should flex. The wood itself should flex. If you have a really weak string or a natural material string, the bow has to bend a little bit. It has to give a little bit so you don't wreck your string. How do you make a handhold? What kind of materials do you use? Go down to your local creek, or even a ditch would probably have just a stone that's about, a little smaller than your hand, with a flat side to it and a round side, or the whole thing could be round. Okay, geology is important again here because it makes the job a lot easier if you know which rocks are harder than which. Put this on the ground and you start pecking at it with a harder quartz or granite stone right in the middle. I only worked on that for about 2 minutes, and look at that, I got a pretty good depression. Another 5 minutes and that would be nice and deep. Perfect for a handhold. You want the handhold to be, you want the depression to be at least ½ inch or a little deeper, so that the spindle doesn't pop out when there's a lot of pressure on it. Okay?